Thanks. Fyodor, it's a very special treat to have you with us. I think you just flew in a couple days ago, right?
A couple hours ago.
A couple hours ago. Tell me, now that this film is out in the world, what has that been like for you to see audiences respond to this film, and also to have your ideas out in the world?
It's wonderful question. Not work. Working. I'm sorry. That is wonderful question. But I not good speak English. It's for me best speaking more simple as with idiot. It's translate me, please, Chad.
Yeah, sure. I should say that Fyodor did not speak a word of English until Sundance, and he realized he needed to brush up, so he watched Game of Thrones three times in a row, all 5 seasons or however many.
If you ask me what is the political situation in Ukraine, as I speak identically as in Game of Thrones.
Chad, you described in the beginning that initially you thought you were making a 5-minute film. At what point did you realize that this was a much bigger project?
It happened in stages. At first I thought maybe it's a 10-minute film, and then I thought maybe 20 minutes, and it happened sort of organically. So when we first saw, I'll take a step back. I wanted to make the 5-minute piece that would just answer a simple question of what this woodpecker sound was. And when I suggested to Fyodor that we can do it very briefly by interviewing a few scientists, Fyodor said, "This will never work. We must reenact my dreams, starting with a raft that it must be built out of mirrors, and I will sail across a radioactive sea with a torch, naked." And that's the start. And then it goes on for another hour and a half. And that's how we'll get closer to the truth. Because if we do your way, your American way, no one will tell us. People will lie to us. It'll just get us more confused. I thought, I don't have the money or the time. This is insane. But we made a deal. I would help him with his dreams, and he would come and interview some of the scientists. And at our first meeting, it was the guy, whenever he would mention the radar, his hand would start to shake, the Soviet officer, ex-Soviet. And Fyodor thought, maybe there's something here. And when I saw their first dream, which was him, we were in Chernobyl. We were not planning to stumble upon a room full of gas masks. But we saw them, and I thought, that's insane. And I went back to the car to get out of the radiation. And then later that night, Fyodor showed me the footage of him walking with his torch wrapped in plastic. And I just thought, oh my God, this is insane. I don't know how I could use this, but it's beautiful. And there's something here that shows us about Fyodor's inner vision. So I kind of fell a little bit in love with his approach. He got some respect for mine. And at that point, we realized that it would have to be a bigger project.
Talk to me about going to the Russian Woodpecker. It's it's an architectural site unlike any else I've ever seen. You really experienced its full scope. Can you elaborate on what that experience was like?
Well, we had an amazing fixer in Ukraine. We were not allowed to go there. She was able to get us access, but we had we had to promise we would not touch the antenna because it's radioactive, it's rusty, it's swaying, for a lot of good reasons. But we had a crazy guy on our crew, Artyom, and he's just disappeared for a second. He said he needed to use a bathroom, went behind a tree. And again, I didn't know that he climbed up the first time until later that night when he showed me the footage. So it was kind of renegade. It was insane, of course, just to see the footage that he had captured. Just to be in the presence of this was overwhelming. And when we got into Sundance, I realized we don't have enough. I wasn't showing the majesty of it, so we went back with a drone and captured those final scenes. But by that point, the war was on, and they said, "Look, if you have to keep your drone on this side of the antenna, because we had a drone last week, it went too far up, and the Russians shot it out of the air, and you could start a war." Now, none of this we were not officially allowed to be there at all, but we found that well-placed bottles of vodka as gifts tended to distract the guards.
Let's take some questions from the audience. Raise your hand, and I will call on you. Don't be shy. Yep, right here.
Yeah, Artyom, as soon as we heard from him, we did an Indiegogo campaign and quickly got the money we needed to get him into surgery, to do rehabilitation. I think we don't put it in the movie, but 2 of his friends died at the same moment on both sides of him. We thought that it would distract from the story, the central story, but that's why he's so emotional. I think he's changed, as anyone would, living through that. But physically, he was terrified that he was numb and he couldn't move his fingers. And his whole life is cinematography. His dream is to be a DP. And now he's back working. We're actually working together, and he's totally healed physically. And that's because of strangers around the world just donated. Within hours, we got all the money we needed to get him help and to buy him a new camera. It took him years and years to save up for his camera, and he didn't know how he would ever get another one. Well, we haven't shown the film in Russia, so we've been invited to screen in December at a documentary festival. Fyodor thinks it's a trap and crazy to go, but I think it's worth taking the risk, at least for me. So we'll see. The Russians haven't really seen the film. In terms of whether it's what kind of theory it is, I mean, I started this very skeptically, and I don't really go in for conspiracies. I thought Chernobyl was an open and shut case. But the more that we interviewed senior officials, serious guys and women, and they all told me the same thing, that there's a cover-up, that something happened on the night of the disaster that has been not revealed, that we've been lied to, that the documents were falsified. So I became slowly convinced that something fishy definitely happened. Whether Fyodor has put all these crazy puzzle pieces together into the exact correct picture, I don't know that we'll ever know. And for me, it's less important than, for me, this is more of a psychological journey, a psychological portrait, and also a commentary on the impossibility of knowing truth in an autocratic society. And Ukraine is free, but the ghosts of this sort of surreal tyranny and this paranoia, they're everywhere, and they influence everything, and it makes it impossible to really know. No one trusts official explanations of anything. Many people we talked to said, of course Chernobyl was not an accident. The CIA blew it up. There's very few, it's hard to get out of the fog of conspiracy and paranoia and fear.
I believe.
Who's got a question? This gentleman standing, I'll get you.
So there are a lot of theories and a lot of unfinished work that could also be done. What are the plans to take this further? Because more people will see it, the more people that know about this might help with the investigation. What are your plans for the future to help with distribution of this information?
Yeah, it's a great question about the future. I think that, as Fyodor said many times, I'm an artist. I'm over my head here. I'm asking questions coming from my gut. At this point, experts, archivists, a tribunal needs to take over. I'm very skeptical that will happen. The documents are sealed in Moscow. There have been 3 official Ukrainian commissions asking for them in times of peace, and they were all denied. I really don't see in this environment a cooperative investigation. Also, I think both Ukraine and Russia have bigger problems right now than putting the amount of time and effort that it would take to get to the bottom of something that happened 30 years ago, and which the more that you dig, the stranger it becomes. A lot we didn't put in the film, a lot of other just madness. It's like JFK, and that's why for me, it's more of a symbol of, again, as I said, the impossibility of really getting at truth or really believing in truth in that part of the world. So I don't think it's Fyodor's taken the first step. He's laid out a theory, a motive, and now I think people are starting to ask more questions, and maybe some headway will be made. What the heck was up with the antenna? Did it work or not? It's very controversial and very complicated, and maybe it's too unclear, but basically it worked when it was turned on full blast, but it also blotted out television stations in the Soviet Union, in Europe, and SOS communications. It was a disaster. So yeah, they could make it work, barely, there's questions. They can see a shuttle, but a shuttle makes a signature that's like 50 times larger than a missile. So that was a brag, but not necessarily fulfilled its actual mission. There was an order, you must stop this interference. When they did that, they turned it down, they changed the frequencies. It could not, it was absolutely dysfunctional. Fyodor's point when he stood there is they should have known that from the beginning. They should have been able to tell that it would be useless, because useless if it wasn't able to function on these frequencies and at this power. So, you know, it depends who you ask. If you ask the guys who built it, they said, no, it worked. You didn't tell us, you didn't ask if it also knocked out all radio communications around the world. It worked. But you asked the people in government, they were pulling out their hair. Like, this is a huge public relations nightmare. Everyone in the world is calling and complaining.
Yeah, that is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things for the sun activity. Yes, that is, антенна была замечательной вещью для наблюдения за солнечной активностью, потому что она реагировала на это тоже.
Yeah. Just that it was good at assessing how much solar activity there was in the aurora borealis, but not much else.
So,
Another quick little.
and the signal about start, that is problem of this antenna, that is not see the signal of start rocket, not. The antenna speak every day in breakfast, in dinner, and in supper. Yes, now start rocket and begin the 3-word war.
Yeah, they saw a lot of They saw all the shuttles, but they saw a lot of shuttles that weren't launched. Also,
And if antenna all time silent, it's normal. But the antenna speak about begin of war each day.
it's amazing that they didn't rely on that. There was a few times when they sent to Moscow, like, yes, we know for sure that there's been an intercontinental ballistic launch,
Yeah.
and they put everything on high alert, and then at the next minute they're like, oh no, actually it's just coming from a TV station like in Prague. So we were lucky.
Have I 1000 mistake signal?
Yeah.
It's one, yeah.
Take a couple more questions.
What was the craziest moment? I think there were a lot. I think it's. Yeah, but that's not in the film. When he had his torch, they screamed, "Throw the water on the torch!" We had to put the torch out because people were coming, and we had this torch inside Chernobyl. We weren't allowed, and I grabbed a big bucket and I was about to throw it onto the Fyodor and the torch, and then they screamed, "It's benzene!" So it was the gasoline. I was just about to. That would have been a different movie. So I think the craziest moment was when we decided to put a secret camera on Fyodor and find out why he'd backed off and why he wanted us to destroy the footage. And I felt really bad. We talked to Artyom, and I said, I don't know, he's my friend, and I don't know if this is ethical, and should we do this? And Artyom said, he's been filming you with a secret camera. And I was like, what? He said, yeah. And then I thought, wait a second. And we learned later, Artyom was filming us both with secret cameras. So we had this like trio of paranoia for about 3 weeks where none of us trusted the other. He thought for sure I was CIA. I couldn't figure out why he recanted all of his theories. Artyom thought we were both crazy. And but when I watched that footage and I realized they had threatened his son, that to me was, because that was what he had been predicting all along, which I thought he was exaggerating and paranoid, that the Soviet Union was still alive. But to see that reminded me that, in fact, it was. And he had been predicting that. He kept, when I first met him, a year before any troubles, Russia's coming back, the empire's coming back, there's going to be an invasion. Everyone, he said that, this guy is kooky. But you know, I often say he's like an antenna. He's like an over-the-horizon antenna. Like all great artists, he's sensitive to things that the rest of us aren't. Somehow he felt that, and unfortunately, it turned out to be true. Maybe we can have Fyodor answer what his most crazy moment was, and then because he didn't know about that secret camera until Sundance, he had no idea. I took him aside about 5 minutes before. I said, "There's something I have to tell you. We were filming you, and please don't kill me." And then we went up, and even after the applause, I looked over, and someone asked what he felt about that, and he said, "I thought I would be the protagonist. Now I realize Chad made me the protagonist and the antagonist. It's twice as good for me." So thank God he forgave that. Что для тебя самый сумасшедший момент для этого фильма?
That is the first emotion, first image when I see the Duga. It's absolute crazy building, absolute crazy things in world, and maybe in film when we have a drone, we have a genial cameraman, but that is emotion as you see this. It's as maybe another planet, absolute another planet. I now the all can to see Duga. In when we begin the shot the movie, the Duga was closed, absolute closed. That is very difficult to go to Duga, and now that is touristic object, and that is change. And after we make this film.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now you can go see it.
open this Duga.
There was, while we were making this, it was off limits. One of the reasons was because President Yanukovych gave to one of his buddies a letter that allowed him to sell the Duga for any price that he could get. And so he was like hopping around California trying to find, like going to anyone and saying, hey, you want to buy an antenna? And, you know, no one, of course, no one, you know, it's in the fine print, it was radioactive, but they were trying to sell it for either scrap metal or research. But that never came to pass.